The Buffalo Bills have been one of the best teams in recent memories. However, despite the fact they have a top 5 quarterback and a top 10 offense, this team is struggling right now. They currently sit at 5-5, and their chances of making the playoffs every single week get slimmer and slimmer. And I'm not here to share with you guys all the little small details about why this team is struggling, because most people have already started to talk about those problems. But I will briefly cover that stuff because it is important to set up kind of what I want to do with this video. In this video, I want to answer a couple of questions. Number 1, what is the problem? Number 2, what is the solution to the problem? And number 3, can this team seriously contend for a Super Bowl this year and in the next couple seasons? So to answer those questions, I did want to start off with a little bit of groundwork to begin with. For starters, on offense, as I mentioned earlier, this is arguably a top 10 unit. On offense, they average 26.2 points per game, which ranks them the 8th highest in the entire NFL. They score 3.2 touchdowns per game, which ranks them 5th. They have the 2nd highest third down conversions, the 3rd best yards per play, and the 5th best points per play. And defensively, it's not that bad either. Defensively, they only allow 18.4 points per game, which ranks them at number 5. They rank 8th in opponents' touchdowns per game. They also rank 7th in opponents' yards per play. And when opponents get into the red zone, the Buffalo Bills defense does a very solid job of slowing them down. Inside the red zone, the Buffalo Bills have a 45.45% opponent red zone scoring percentage, which ranks them the 8th best in the entire NFL. Now, some very interesting statistics about this current Buffalo Bills defense is that they actually have the 5th best sack percentage, but they have the 30th worst opponent completion percentage. So you guys don't really have to be a doctor to diagnose that. They have good pass rushers who can consistently get pressure, but the secondary without Tre'Davious White is really struggling. To go back to the offense, everyone likes to think the turnovers is the biggest problem for this team, which they definitely are, but there's a little bit of context I want to give to that. For starters, the Buffalo Bills offense has a 3.14% interception throw rate, which is the 27th lowest in the NFL, but despite those statistics, Josh Allen does have 11 interceptions thrown this year, and in the past 6 games, he's at least thrown 1 interception. And his most recent week against the Denver Broncos, he threw 2 interceptions and looked pretty bad at times. What we do need to understand about Josh Allen is that he has that Brett Favre in him. Josh Allen is a gunslinger. He may throw some interceptions, but he can kind of get away with that because of how good he is. Josh Allen by himself can carry this offense to tremendous marks, as we've seen over these past couple seasons. Let's not forget this Buffalo Bills team has been consistently in the playoffs with over 10 wins these past couple years. And the big reason why? Josh Allen. So yes, the turnovers suck and Josh Allen has to get that fixed, but despite the fact that he's throwing turnovers, he's still winning games. Despite the fact that he's been leading the league in interceptions over the last couple of seasons, he's still winning games. Now, I don't want to take credit for this, but I heard it in a podcast. I'm sorry, I don't actually know the exact podcast, but if you guys do know the quote, let me know in the comments below. A podcaster made a very good point that the talent around Josh Allen is the reason why this team is losing games, because Josh Allen himself can live with the turnovers and make up for it, but the talent around him can't make up for it. You take away Stefon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Dalton Kincaid, and everybody else, it's just not that great. And while I do think Dalton Kincaid can turn into a very stud player, right now he's not there. And when Stefon Diggs is not having a great game, such as last week, this passing offense is kind of bad. We all know how good Stefon Diggs is, and I think we have to understand that moving forward is going to be the #1 priority for this offense, to get Stefon Diggs the ball in as many ways as possible. But another thing that has to happen is the run game has to get going. On the year, James Cook has 120 attempts for only 615 yards and only 1 touchdown. And what I find to be very interesting about James Cook, and I don't necessarily know to blame him or the coaching staff or the play calling, but against good defenses / good teams, he doesn't really run the ball that much. In his most recent game against the Cincinnati Bengals, he only had 6 attempts for 20 yards. And then going back all the way to October 8th, where they went up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, he had 5 carries for -4 yards. And then again, against the Dolphins, he had 12 carries for 29 yards. His best statistic running games were against the Las Vegas Raiders, the Washington Commanders, and the Denver Broncos. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not like he's converting a lot of touchdowns. He only has 1 rushing touchdown this year. You also do have to take into account that James Cook is a really good receiving running back as well. He has 24 catches for 222 yards and also another touchdown there. So moving forward, I do think it is a priority for this offense to establish James Cook, because in my opinion, this offense is at its best when Josh Allen is benefiting from James Cook, and then obviously vice versa applies to that as well. I'm not saying James Cook has to be an every down back, because obviously he cannot do the dirty work of a guy like Latavius Murray can, but I think for Josh Allen, establishing him, priority #1, and I think that's the biggest reason why this offense has been struggling. And obviously we cannot forget the turnovers. That is another reason why the offense can move the ball up in field all at once, but if they have turnovers, it doesn't matter. So to sum up why they're losing these games, #1, turnovers. #2, not getting James Cook going. And #3, the defense can't stop any passers. But let's talk about how I think this team can go moving forward. For starters, this season is kind of a wrap at this point. Sure, they can potentially make a run and somehow make the playoffs, but sitting 5-5 and having a tough schedule ahead of you is just a tough situation to be in. As it sits right now, Ken Dorsey just got fired, which I do want to talk a little bit about in just a second, but Joe Brady is now the interim offensive coordinator. I think for Joe Brady, this is a really good chance for him to show what he's worth. I'll be honest with you, I don't really love the fit between between Joe Brady and Josh Allen. Everyone knows that Joe Brady was a part of that LSU team back in 2019, but before that he was actually, I want to say, the passing coordinator for the New Orleans Saints. And if you're asking me, I don't really love the fit of having that Saints identity with Josh Allen, but I am interested to see if that can work out, and I do think for Joe Brady this is a really good chance for him to show his worth. And for the Bills, taking a risk at offensive coordinator is kind of the smart play long term, because right now you really get to see if Joe Brady can be the guy, and if he isn't, so what? You move on, you don't make the playoffs, it is what it is. Again, you're 5-5 and it's going to be very hard to make the playoffs, so even if Joe Brady was bad, it doesn't really matter that much. Now let's go back to Ken Dorsey. Do I think that he was a bit of a scapegoat in this situation? 100%. But at the end of the day, this is the same offense for the past couple years that everyone knows. I do think a change was necessary. I don't really love the fact they fired him mid-season and kind of put the blame on him, but I do think in order to make a guy like Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen happy, change might have been necessary. I don't think Ken Dorsey's a bad offensive coordinator. I just think it's the fact that I don't think he's really willing to adapt his offense to the strengths of this team. At the end of the day, this is the same offense this team has been running over the course of the last 3 to 4 years now, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I can see that perspective, but I do think in the NFL you have to make adjustments. When a team faces the Buffalo Bills, yes, they fear Josh Allen, but they don't fear the play calling. They kind of know what to expect. So moving on from a Ken Dorsey and hiring a new offensive coordinator, I think is the right move. I don't have any names right now on deck for who they could potentially hire this offseason. I also do think that if this season does go down the tank, I think Sean McDermott also gets fired, and that position can be extremely interesting and honestly a position that a lot of coaches are going to want to get because of how good Josh Allen is, which is a big reason why I actually kind of like the future for the Buffalo Bills. You move on from the old regime that got you to this point in the first place, you thank them, you give them flowers, you kiss them on the cheeks, you move on. You find a replacement for Sean McDermott, you find an offensive-minded guy who knows what he's doing for the system, and you just move on with things. I'm not really that concerned about the Stefon Diggs situation. I think a lot of media members right now are blaming him for the current Buffalo Bills problems, but a lot of the stuff that's been happening regarding that situation didn't even come from Stefon Diggs' own mouth. And I also do think that Diggs really does like Josh Allen. I think if you're Stefon Diggs, you're willing to wait out the rest of the season to potentially see what can happen this offseason, and I do think whoever the Buffalo Bills do decide to hire as their head coach, they have to find somebody that Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen approve of, because ultimately that's your franchise. Those two are the two guys you have to have moving forward. I would not get rid of Stefon Diggs. I know he can be a bit of a head case and kind of a drama guy on the sidelines, but I look at his personality as very similar to Dez Bryant, the old Cowboys receiver, an extremely great receiver at what he does, but a bit of a prima donna on the sideline because he wants to do something. He wants to make plays and he wants to help the team win. Now, there's a lot of problems this team already has, but I do think moving forward, if you can find some young pieces to replace some members on the defense, that would be nice as well. At the end of the day, this is an extremely old defense. Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Rasul Douglas, Von Miller, those are all older guys. And Tre'Davious White and Matt Milano are no younger than them either. To be honest with you, you're obviously going to get Matt Milano back, but I think Tre'Davious White's time with the Buffalo Bills might be over with. So for this team's future, they have to find some young replacements to replace them with. Whether you can do that in this year's draft, I'm not sure. I don't really think this is a great cornerback draft by any means, but if you can find a stud in the first or second rounds, by all means, I think you do go for it. You could also look in free agency, but I don't really know if they have the cap space to sign a big name guy. If you do get off some contracts like Tre'Davious White and Micah Hyde, then maybe you can go out there and get a Kendall Fuller or somebody like that, but again, that's kind of up for debate. But the main reason why I actually like the upside in the future of the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs. As long as you have those two guys, you're going to win games. And when you look at the rest of the AFC, there's a lot of teams that are kind of on the decline. You obviously do have Kansas City, but they have their own problems they're dealing with, and I do think that a team like Buffalo can give them a run for their money. The Cincinnati Bengals look really weird right now. The Joe Burrow injuries, the questions regarding T. Higgins and whether he's going to stay, they're kind of in a similar spot to the Buffalo Bills, just maybe a little bit better of a situation. The Jaguars, as good as they look, don't really look like a serious contending team. The Houston Texans look great, but we'll have to wait and see if they can prove this in the playoffs. So the AFC is going to be open for these next couple of seasons. And if you're Buffalo, if you can hire the right guy with the right offensive mind who can fix this Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs relationship and system, I think you have a chance. I know Josh Allen is going to be a gunslinger, but you have to live with it, in my opinion. You have to live with his mistakes because ultimately you know that as long as you have Josh Allen on the field, he can make plays to win any game. And that includes the big games against teams like Kansas City, Baltimore, so on and so forth. So yes, the AFC is a gauntlet of teams who are extremely talented, but Buffalo is just as talented, if not even more talented than a lot of those AFC teams. And if this team can promote James Cook to be a featured back in this system, you're going to have a trio of James Cook, Stefon Diggs, and Josh Allen on your offense. That seems amazing. So can this team contend for Super Bowls? Probably not this year. At this point in the season, you're very much an injured roster, and currently with Sean McDermott, I just don't have faith they can make it that far. But after this season, if you do move on from Sean McDermott and you do hire an offensive mind who can fix the problems I've laid out in this video, 100% I think they can contend. They have problems. They're far from a perfect roster. They're going to have problems moving forward as well, but every single team in the NFC and AFC have their own unique problems. So again, I doubt they win it this year, but give it a year or two, they could potentially be in contention right back where they used to be. But Buffalo Bills fans and NFL fans, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Can Buffalo truly put it together to become a Super Bowl roster, or is this roster doomed to become an irrelevant team in the next couple seasons? And of course, if you guys did enjoy my portion of the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button because it helps me out a ton, as well as share this video to your friends and families because they might enjoy it as well. But I love you guys. Peace.